But here, no money will be enough to fill the sense of loss. Huda Abdelhamid, Al Jazeera, on the road north of Kyiv.
Andrei Illarionov was chief economic advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin from 2000 to 2005 and has since become a critic of the Kremlin. He joins us via Skype from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for being with us. So you know Putin's sort of mindset well, or you at least were familiar with him at the time. What do you think lies behind the tactics for Mariupol now, Putin saying that they won't storm the steel plant?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. It's rather hard to be in control of the mindset of a person on any particular decision, especially such decision like the siege of Mariupol. But it is quite clear that Putin has a very clear goal to erase Mariupol from the face of Earth. For him, Mariupol has a sacrosanct meaning. That is a place that has been taken by separatists back in year 2014, and after that has been liberated by Ukrainians, especially by the battalion Azov. Now it is regiment of Azov. And regiment of Azov constitutes a very particular place in the mindset and ideology of Mr. Putin and his surrounding clique. So they consider that regiment the so-called nationalistic or even Nazi. So that is why the move from Gulay Pole to northeast. There is some progress, but it is still too early to judge whether whether Russians will be able to have a victory over there or whether Ukrainians will be able to resist these attacks. But your main question, what could stop Mr. Putin, we know the answer. The answer is only one: the total defeat of Russian troops in Ukraine. This is only possible instrument, the only possible recipe for stopping his offensive and stopping this war. And for that, Ukraine needs weapons. Ukraine needs weapons from allies and friends, from Western countries, from any country in the world, to resist this unprovoked aggression from Kremlin.
So we've had another promise of more equipment from President Biden today. But in terms of, to go to what the effect of the sanctions are, for example, on Russia, what do you think the impact has been of the sanctions so far? And what do you think ought to be done to put more pressure on Putin, if that's what you think might work?
We need to have a very clear understanding of the numbers. Mr. Biden's commitment to Ukraine for military supply is $2.6 billion for the whole year. So just we need to remember that during the Afghan campaign, United States spent more than $100 billion per year. But they fought against Taliban that did not have any heavy equipment, no tanks, no any jets, no any serious artillery. But now Ukrainians fighting with the second army.
Ukrainians fight back.
We're in a critical window now, and the United States and our allies and partners are moving as fast as possible to continue to provide Ukraine the forces that they need, the weapons they need, the equipment they need. Their forces need to defend their nation.
The latest aid package, announced the same day the Ukrainian Prime Minister was in Washington, meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden and military leaders. It totals $800 million in heavy artillery, including 72 howitzers, 144,000 rounds of ammunition, and follows more than $1 billion in security assistance already sent to Ukraine.
However, with this latest disbursement, I've almost exhausted the drawdown authority I have that Congress authorized for Ukraine.
That's why next week, Biden will ask Congress for even more money to continue the flow of weapons. But as for where these weapons go once handed out, the White House admits there's little accountability. The failure to track who is receiving U.S. weapons alarms members of the president's own Democratic Party. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar last month tweeted, the consequences could be disastrous if weapons are given to paramilitary groups such as the far-right linked Azov Battalion without accountability.
A lot of these weapons also end up in conflicts outside of the country. And this is the
Warning of violence at the Al-Aqsa Mosque as Israeli police disperse Palestinians ahead of the last visit by Jewish groups during Ramadan. Boris Johnson's own colleagues vote for an investigation into whether he lied to the UK Parliament over pandemic parties. And in sport, a dramatic finish for the 76ers in the NBA playoffs. Details coming up. At least 18 people have been killed in explosions across multiple cities in Afghanistan. The northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif, the nearby province of Kunduz, and the eastern province of Nangarhar were all targeted. Asad Beg reports on the latest attacks.
Worshippers at a mosque targeted as they prayed. Minority Shias were once again the victim of this attack. It happened in the northern Afghan city of Mazar-e-Sharif. Reports say 10 people were killed and 40 were injured. A bag with explosives that was detonated from a distance. ISIL in Afghanistan say it was behind the bombing.
Today, the enemies of Afghanistan brought a big massacre to Mazar-e-Sharif. Unfortunately, as you can see in the PD2 area of Saydukan of Mazar-e-Sharif, an explosion occurred which was from explosive material, and approximately 25 people were killed and injured in this incident.
The Taliban has been fighting groups linked to ISIL since seizing power last August. In separate attacks, several people were killed when an explosion hit a bus carrying airport workers in Kunduz province. And 4 Taliban members died when an explosive device detonated near their car. These attacks come days after 2 blasts outside schools in the Shia neighborhood of Kabul. That attack killed at least 6 people. One of the major challenges for the Taliban government has been to provide security, but minority communities continue to live in fear. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera.
Fawzia Koofi is a women's rights activist and the first female deputy speaker of parliament in Afghanistan. She's also a former Afghan presidential candidate. She joins us now from London. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. So I want you to talk to us more about that attack on the mosque. ISIL has claimed it was behind it. How big a presence does ISIL have at the moment in Afghanistan?
Well, it's very complex. The more Taliban continue to have oppressive measures, I think the more Daesh or ISIS and other military extremist groups will become stronger. What's happening in Afghanistan is devastating. The people, on one hand, are suffering from poverty, lack of food, lack of jobs. On the other hand, you have a government or a de facto power that is oppressive, and then you add in this holy month of Ramadan, you add all these bombing and explosions, which by no means the actual number of casualty actually reach to media, because the Taliban try to show that it's not very significant. The casualties are insignificant and not a lot, but in reality, we know that mosques and schools, for instance, are public places, and then the casualties are much more than what's reported, actually.
And do you detect a kind of pattern in the way these attacks in recent weeks have been happening?
I think Taliban have really inspired a lot of military extremist groups. Sadly, I just think that this is going to even get more. It's going to, especially in the light of what's happening in Ukraine, in Central Asia, more and more military extremist groups will choose the same path that the Taliban have been, pursuing in the last 20 years, which resulted to somehow their kind of military victory, which obviously inspired a lot of military extremist groups, which will follow the same path. So it's only going to get worse, and the people of Afghanistan will be the main victim of this kind of geopolitics of power.
And how much anger is there from ordinary people? I mean, already they're suffering from the economic situation. If the Taliban can't control the security, which was one of their big claims that they said they could, how do you expect people to react?
As I said before, people are devastated. I was talking to a woman yesterday who actually lost her son in the school attack, and 3 years ago she lost her husband, and then 2 years ago she lost her daughter. So basically, in the space of 3 years, the whole family is finished. Like her, thousands of families actually, especially in the last few days of attack. Taliban claim of bringing security, they have failed in that because, first of all, security is not just silencing the gun. It's beyond that. It's about justice. It's about, giving people the support as a government delivering to the people. They have not been able to do that. And the only claim that they were proud of it was security, which we know that it has even got worse. Spring is usually offensive in Afghanistan. You have different groups that will, use offensive for pursuing their agenda. And this time it's Daesh. As I said before, the Taliban have also been able to sell this narrative to the world that they are the only group fighting Daesh, which I believe you cannot really defeat one military extremist group with another one. The solution is to empower